Star Wars Outlaws is here, and what kind of game is it really? Hey and welcome, I'm Hammeh, and today, going back to a little bit of my roots, not done this for a while, we're going to be reviewing in progress Star Wars Outlaws. We will be talking about the story, the combat, the open world, what that is and what it isn't, and indeed what this game is and what it isn't too. Now, timecodes as well as labelled sections are in the description if you want to skip around different topics about this game and my opinions. So if you want to get straight to the juicy stuff, get stuck in and click the links below. Set between The Empire Strikes Back and Star Wars Return of the Jedi, roughly in the timeline, we join Kay Vess, a scoundrel in an up-and-coming sense on her home planet of Canto Bight. Now, after causing trouble and getting a death mark on her head, Kay and Nix head out into the galaxy, partially to shake the trouble following them, but also to see what other trouble they can get up to. The Empire during this period is trying to tighten its grip and squash the Rebel Alliance, so a criminal underworld in light of slightly laxer security is very much thriving. While various criminal syndicates such as Crimson Dawn, the Hutts, the Pikes and more battle it out for supremacy in their various corners of the galaxy, a figure called Slero steps forward and attempts to superimpose his will and his authority over the top of these warring clans. Now, to keep this review spoiler light, Kay of course gets involved in this world, and whilst battling through her own story and discovering a bit about her past, clashes with the Empire, clashes with the Rebel Alliance, and also works out, as well as discovering about her past, a bit about what machinations are going on between these various groups, playing them off against each other in certain circumstances, and with all of the usual betrayals, skullduggery and more you'd expect from a Star Wars story. And that is what this game is at its heart. It is a Star Wars story. Now, that's not me comparing it to, say, Solo or to Rogue One, which literally have the A Star Wars Story piece appended to their titles. Outlaws' very logo is very reminiscent to me of the Solo style, and I think that if a Star Wars story wasn't a specific subgroup of Star Wars cinematic universe kind of titles, kind of a genre that Disney has created, then this game should have that stuck underneath the bottom of it. It's been made to feel like such a thing, play like such a thing, and be experienced like such a thing, and to be honest, I think it does, so far, a really good job. Now, although I've not finished the game yet, without giving any big spoilers to you, some pretty big settings and some pretty big characters from the Star Wars universe at this point do show up in the game. And as I've been playing it through it so far, it really pulls together both through its combat, its stealth mechanics, the kind of different kinds of gameplay it has between flying starships, between running around on a speeder bike. Massive, to be honest with you, have done a really good job of making you feel like you're in Star Wars, and the Star Wars of the original trilogy at that to me. The story, being immersed in this world, is certainly one of the big reasons that I jumped into this, wanting to play it through and wanting to make some content and try and review it for you. Kay starts out as quite a naive, wet behind the ears type character who's had some jobs go wrong. Her mother, her sort of inspirational figure, is not around, and we gradually throughout the game get little bits of story explaining what's happened there. As a result, Kay has mentors on her home world, and when she takes to the stars, many of the people she meets initially are a little condescending, a little skeptical, but as she demonstrates her competency and skill, warm up to her and open up a world of opportunities for her. There are some fun characters that I've met so far. A Mon Calamari fixer is one of my favourites, reminding me of a half mentor figure, half secretary from Monsters Inc. type voice. And as we wrap up talking about story and world building to start with, I am honestly really impressed with how much Outlaws manages to nail the feeling of Star Warsy, for want of a better word. Cities feel carefully designed, populated, but also organic and alive. As you walk around, people will chatter, and there are many voice lines and many interactions between characters that don't even lead to a quest, but are just flavour and world building. You can hear conversations between people, and towns and spaces that you're in feel very real and pretty immersive. One of my favourite moments so far was when I had a chat with a character in the game who's part of my crew. I promptly went off to go and do part of the main story that he'd asked me to do, but on the way out of the city, saw him chatting someone up at a bar. I talked to him, he actually referenced the quest I was on, and then went back to chatting this person up with her corresponding groans. Brief shout out to the music here. The music I played at the beginning of this video is the title theme for Star Wars Outlaws, which absolutely slaps. Many of the main themes and planetary themes are very John Williams-esque without being too derivative, and you have a lot of different kinds of music when you step into cantinas and main cities. The ambience and the quality of the music is really, really awesome. Finally, just to try and articulate the feel of this game, if you're not playing it yourself, there are some really, really beautiful moments in it that I've experienced so far. Now, I'm playing on a 3080, a mid-spec machine from 3 or so years ago. My system spec on PC, that's what I'm reviewing it on, has come in just over between the recommended spec and the slightly higher spec than that. Pulling up on my speeder bike, completing a quest just as the sun was setting on Toshara, I looked out over a vista and honestly hadn't felt so immersed in a Star Wars game in many, many years. It's a world I enjoy spending time in. I could have got further in the game if I'd mainlined the main story and not wandered off the beaten track, but I have, and when I have, I've enjoyed it. I think, having talked about story and ambience, it's a good time to jump into the open world and what it is and what it isn't. The phrase open world has been used a lot in the marketing of this game, so I wouldn't, just to be super clear, see it as an open world of, say, a GTA or a Red Dead Redemption. I saw people in previews saying this is like a Red Dead Redemption or has, reminiscences of me of that. I think that's a little bit unfair. What you effectively have is a bunch of different planets. You then have sort of hub cities on these planets and then areas that you can explore, have a look at. You don't need to unlock them with a Assassin's Creed style tower mechanic or anything like that. And stories and questing as well as open world events will take you around these different spaces. Now, the challenge with any kind of world or space is how big or small do you make it? How packed with quests, with characters, with dialogue, with action, with things going on do you make it? And then how do you give the player an ability to traverse and move around it? Do you or do you not have quick travel, for example, in games with very, very large spaces? Does that or does that not add to the game if you have it? Well, in Star Wars Outlaws, you have your speeder, which you can upgrade very much like your ship and other things, but a little bit more on that later. I found, as a quick example, on the first planet, Toshara, after you've come out of Canto Bight, which is effectively the intro and prologue, you could, from being outside the main city on Toshara, take roughly 4 minutes driving very, very fast on your bike to drive from kind of one corner of the map to the other. Some areas on the map are locked either for future DLC or indeed you have areas that you can't get into until a quest sends you there at some points later in the game. So to be clear, this game is not one open world that you can drive across without stopping for 30 or 40 minutes. What it is, however, is a lot of open world feeling spaces and planets, and I find that actually Massive do a really good job with making these feel interconnected. When you fly down from space and land on a planet in a city, for example, the way that cutscenes and you being in space are stitched together make it feel as if you're very part of one smooth piece of action and landing. And as I previously mentioned, with the environment and the music and the general feeling of things, those combined with some of the events that you can do out in the world do make you feel that you're going through a world that people populate. It is not an open space with an occasional NPC here, an occasional NPC there. You see villages, you see settlements. As you're driving from one place to another, there may be a few different types of mission, like, for example, raiding some Imperial supplies that have been stolen. There are treasure puzzles, small little things that you walk around and solve with Nix to get extra items, and these eventually go towards Nix cosmetics as well as some other things. There are settlements under attack from pirates. I'll check back and do another video on this when I've completed the game and check the variety, particularly on the later planets, but all in all, so far, it feels like the world is thoughtfully designed, and in moving through the world and story, I've never felt as if I'm in an empty space with nothing going on or nothing to do. Like I said before, it's very much a world that you drink up. I walk through cities slowly. I hear things going on. Quests will pop up in a main hub. There was one particular person, for example, who was down on his luck gambling, and I had the option to give him some money and come back later. I've fueled a gambler's habit. Is that going to come good for me? I don't know. I need to go and check. Upon completing a platformy type puzzle to do with wind turbines and a wind turbine facility, I finally got on my speeder bike and flew out through the vents of this wind turbine facility and flew out over a huge jump, only to find that in roughly the area where I landed, there was another small jump that I could throw myself over again just to put the icing on the cake of that almost flying out of the Death Star just as it's exploding type experience, that kind of heroic moment. And this isn't a lone experience. There are lots of thoughtful little touches in the design of levels and quests in Outlaws that show that the entire flow of this experience and making you feel heroic and making sure that those moments are as epic as possible has been put at the centre. It's a part of the world design that I really, really enjoy. Apart from Canto Bight and Toshara, there are also 3 other planets, as well as forays and adventures on things which I'm not going to spoil in space around these. You go to Kijimi, you go to, of course, Tatooine, famously, and then also Akiva. To give you a sense of scale, I tend to find that I'm spending a very relaxed walking through, doing some side quests, following the main story a bit as well. I've kind of got about halfway through these in about 15 hours, so I'm expecting that 25-30 hours of casual playthrough. I'm playing on normal difficulty, by the way, and there are story mode difficulties with much weaker enemies and less combat challenges, or you can turn the difficulty right up if you really want to. So I feel that at the moment it feels that the 25 to 30 hour mark that Massive and Ubisoft in interviews have mentioned before Outlaws has released feels like it's going to be just about right. Of course, as this video is releasing, the review embargo is also up, so you can absolutely check other reviews to see if that's been nailed down or not. Okay, that's about the world, that's about the story, that's about how wonderfully, genuinely I appreciate the Star Warsiness of this game. Now, what about the gameplay? Well, you have several core pieces. We'll talk a bit about combat, we'll talk a bit about stealthing and puzzling, driving and flying, and those basically are all of the core experiences that, together with the story, pull together to make Outlaws Outlaws. Combat-wise, you have your trusty blaster that you can update and mod with various different kinds of mods to be good at firing against different kinds of enemy, essentially a simple system there. Now, on the normal difficulty straight out of the box, generally in the early to mid missions of the game, it's taken me a couple of headshots with a blaster to make sure that I take a trooper down. Now, you can tweak your gun, you can accidentally make the game a bit more difficult for yourself if you're using the wrong type of blaster mod against the wrong type of enemy, but these are all pretty intuitive and they're signposted for you in a lot of the quest text and indeed voiceovers. You can also access other weapons as pickups, as well as having Bacta to heal herself and being able to pick up a few grenades. There are a whole bunch of things from stormtrooper assault rifles through to sniper rifles and many, many more that get dropped by enemies or get left around the environment that you can pick up and use for a certain amount of ammo at a certain amount of time, very often in a situation that is contextually good. Trying to defend some of my crew as we were making a run for it out of an Imperial hangar, I picked up a sniper rifle, for example. Used that to pick off the last few enemies before diving into the ship and flying away. You can sneak up behind people. We'll talk a bit more about stealth and those kind of mechanics in a moment. You can melee people with a 1-hit or a 2-hit in order to take them out to try and do things a little bit more stealthily. And of course you have a sleep shot on your blaster you can use as well if you want to do a little bit of ranged sleeping and try and do stealth that way. Combat is pretty crisp. Think third-person action adventure, think Uncharted, think other pieces like that in terms of the shooting, looking down sights, ducking behind cover and similar. Now, combat on normal isn't a gimme. It isn't too easy. If you're reasonably accurate, then you will have some moments where, as you're trying to work out a stealth solution or something else to a puzzle, you will accidentally set off the alarm and loads of troopers will overwhelm you. But generally speaking, you set a situation up in most of the parts where you have a fight that you can take in your favour, take out a few enemies early, make sure they don't get spotted by the people creeping around, and then start a fight if you really want to, although going full stealth is a solution in several cases. Now it's time to talk about Nix, and I think that we can talk about Nix alongside stealth. So Nix is a Merkal. He's a race, a cute little creature in terms of the Star Wars cute creature thing, much better than good old Basil, by the way, I think, in the Acolyte. But hey, honestly, he's pretty fun, he's pretty cool. The kind of buddy cop type best friend dynamic between him and Kay is a bit twee, but it also works pretty well for this kind of thing. Now, Nix, when it comes to stealth gameplay and many things, is pretty much invaluable. You will use him a lot. You can hit your left trigger. I played on a console pad with my PC, or a button, and you can basically bring up a whole bunch of options that are contextual. Nix can do things like distract security cameras, so you can run past them. He can destroy control panels, so people can't use alarms. He can hit things like explosive canisters that blow up and take out people. Very often he's used just to simply trigger a button. You can use him in some cases to steal things. I found myself being slightly kleptomaniac and trying to steal as much as possible to make myself the richest smuggler I could. I mean, early in the game you're pretty down on your luck, so I figured I needed the cash. So in short, Nix is pretty much a toolkit for solving a lot of the situations that So particularly whenever you're outnumbered or in a very dangerous or enclosed situation, Nix is super helpful. In a combat, you can also assign him just to a guard K mode, where he can just attack and fight people who come close to you. Now, let me be clear, a lot of the things you can do with Nix are cool, but in terms of gameplay, they're pretty simple. And it's here where we come on to the part around stealth. K can do a effective one-hit stealth punch from behind if you're distracting an enemy with Nix, providing that the enemy is not seen by any guards who are patrolling, then alarms won't be raised. And this is how stealth comes together. You're trying not to set off alarms. If an alarm is set off or someone becomes aware, then various different NPCs will try and trigger the warning, and in certain sections of the game, triggering this warning alarm will mean that you insta-fail and you have to start again from the beginning of the last checkpoint or section that you came from. Use Nix to distract a camera, duck behind a wall, hide behind a cart that's moving from one section of a hangar to another. Make sure that there are no enemies looking over the section that you want to walk past before grabbing your grappling hook, which can be activated with a contextual press, and swinging through the air, but making sure that no one can see you. I feel a lot of Star Wars Outlaws 4 reviews are going to concentrate on individual elements of the game and things that people did or didn't like about each individual element, and of course that's fair and very, very valid. If I was to do that with this stealth system, I'd say, well, I've played this since like Thief, and in many sections it's felt a little bit more complicated or a little bit more challenging. On normal difficulty, there is challenge here. When you're working out the puzzles, then if you aggro too many people, you can get overwhelmed pretty quickly. But all in all, I've enjoyed stealthing around so far. Now, one thing I will say on a bit of a flip side with regards to stealthing, and I'll talk about movement here at the same time, is that very occasionally Star Wars Outlaws' movement of things, say like the grappling hook, or sometimes when you're mantling, holding onto a ledge before jumping up or jumping down, can sometimes be a little bit clunky in some areas. You jump at something that you think you should be able to grab onto and occasionally you can't, although most things are very, very well signposted. Or for example, the behavior when flying off the grappling hook in some areas, being able to time that and being able to do some things mean that you occasionally perhaps fail a section when you didn't need to. Now, these are not universal problems that I've had in every single instance of using these items, but I felt that I wanted to call them out in a game that often calls for platforming as one of its mechanics, particularly around stealth and also particularly around movement. Then sometimes slightly weird interactions with how you move in the air in certain areas can make a few little bits of the game a little bit more frustrating or require a couple more tries than perhaps they would have needed. However, this wasn't something that has disrupted my overall enjoyment of the game. Alright, so that's Nix and that's stealth. Well, what about the puzzling? So what about the puzzling? Well, in terms of puzzling, it's pretty light in terms of two of the key mechanics. You have two key things. One of them is slicing, which is effectively work out the correct symbols and the position of the symbols in a short key phrase. It's pretty easy to do. The other one is effectively a timing puzzle, hacking terminals, where effectively you check the rhythm of when lights are flashing and press a button type thing along with those timings to make sure that the slice then completes and that you open the terminal. Now, on normal difficulty, on default, these are pretty straightforward and simple once you get used to them. They've turned up quite a bit in gameplay so far, so if this trend continues right through to the end of the game when I finish that, then I'll be honest with you and say that these two mechanics, it could have been good if either they were made more complicated. I have not checked as to whether these scale in difficulty with the gameplay or not, and that can be a way. But even so, they're quite frequent. So even if they're made more difficult, the sheer frequency I've had them so far through the game means that if other mechanics aren't added, these could become a little bit boring, a little bit quick, if that makes sense. So outside of combat, outside of stealth and Nix mechanics and the puzzling, which I've already discussed, having a look at the faction system. This is quite a key part of how quests and other things come together. So you have your key factions, your key criminal syndicates, Crimson Dawn, the Pikes, the Hutts, and the Ashiga clan, and broadly speaking, you have a sliding reputation bar. I run into Pike territory and kill a bunch of them in the open world, and hey, they get more annoyed at me. I go and do a mission for Crimson Dawn, and I'm successful. Hey, they're happy with me. Now, you have various different levels that you can reach. When you reach these levels, you can walk freely through their space. You can actually access secret parts of their different bases. You can buy gear or obtain gear that you would not be able to obtain otherwise, although you can try and sneak into those areas and steal them anyway. Just to be clear, so just because you're not high reputation with a faction doesn't mean you can't try and steal some of their stuff, but you may not be able to buy from their vendors. Now, it's a very MMO type system to me, this. Any MMO type person will feel right at home with this. Fun addition, some nice different stuff that you can obtain. And it's also worth noting that, as well as with the Imperials, there is a system where you can effectively try and make your reputation better to get people off your back. You can buy your way out of trouble with the Imperials, but if you get in too much trouble or at a very negative reputation with any of these factions, then they will send hit squads out after you to try and kill you. And that is something you can either repair by gaining better reputation again, or make money the problem and buy it away. Okay, on to space now. Once you're flown through the first tutorials involving a very heavy auto-aim lock-on mechanic if you want to use it, although you don't have to. Space, to be honest with you, reminded me of very much, I would say, Star Wars Galaxies Jump to Lightspeed. Now that's a dated and old reference if you ever played the old Star Wars Galaxies MMO a chunk of time ago. It is not the very, very full-on simulatory light experience of, say, Star Wars Squadrons, which I've also played. It is not that kind of dogfighting mechanic, but in the context of a scoundrel, of a smuggler game of a Star Wars story, very much like speeder bike riding, it's one of the things I want to do. I can do it, it works well, it feels spacey. There are also different resources that you can get in space and different missions you can fly to. Space and space combat to me, and the space scavenging to me, is very much vehicles-wise and system-wise like going around on speeder bikes. These have been designed to feel Star Warsy and to help you fit in your headspace into that kind of I'm a scoundrel, I'm a smuggler type fantasy. But they're not so heavy on systems or features that they're going to block out maybe more casual players, people who aren't looking for a flight simulator, a dogfight simulator, people who aren't looking for a driving game, who want to be able to enjoy this. So honestly, I enjoyed the bits in space. They were neither the most challenging and nor the most deep in terms of systems, but in the context of the overall narrative, they work pretty well. Now, as a caveat emptor and buyer beware for all of the asterisks that I've said in here, I will absolutely come back and do a second video and update on these with my impressions. For example, if space combat gets more engaging or more deep later in the game, I'll absolutely say so. Same with the puzzling as well. A quick bit in terms of just performance. Now, I'm not a technical reviewer, but I can tell you my experience, and I feel a couple of things stood out. Number one, they say do massive in the minimum specs, you need to have an SSD. Now, I've noticed this with a lot of games nowadays, particularly on PC. So if you're a PC gamer, if you're not putting this on an SSD, you're going to have problems. I'll give you an example. I didn't have it on an SSD as recommended to start with. I had some slow loading textures. I had a problem at one point where I fell through the world because a staircase I was running up didn't quite load properly or quick enough. As soon as I put it on an SSD, that problem disappeared. Now, I'm running, as I said, on a 3080. I'm on a Ryzen 9 5950X and 32 gig of RAM, as well as the SSD. A pretty solid setup even now, I think, but this was brand new like 3 years ago. Everything you're seeing here is that setup on high. I actually cranked up the performance to ultra and it was still looking and running pretty smooth and nice, didn't have any problems. So bear that in mind when you see this. So for me, the game is looking pretty good and running pretty smoothly with that SSD tweak on PC. Now, I haven't played the console version, so check out specific things from other reviews there. If I have heavier problems later in the game, I will of course follow up and let you know. But all good so far. Right. Okay, so Star Wars Outlaws. I've really been enjoying it. It is not perfect. Even at the amount of gameplay that I played, it does have its flaws. But it's honestly the most Star Warsy experience, the most immersed in a fun, popcorny, Saturday evening cinema type way. I've not been that immersed since going to, I'd say, the Guardians of the Galaxy secret cinema here in the UK, where the company take over a venue and basically build a world with characters, with people in dress up, makeup, cosplay, and make you feel like you're in a world of a film. I've not felt as immersed, perhaps in something, since that, in terms of like an experience, a storytelling experience. And the beautiful world, the wonderful music, and just the general feeling and touches of the game have pulled that together for me. This is a game clearly made by people who love Star Wars. For me, Star Wars Galaxies is dragging me back to the feelings of when I first played Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic and Knights of the Old Republic 2 and Star Wars Galaxies, in terms of that feeling in a Star Wars world and as part of a story for me. The plot is fun. The characters are different and I'm enjoying them so far, and the mixture of mechanics and the mixture of things that you can do in this game to me all add up to really sort of being part of that sort of scoundrel or smuggler type fantasy. Now, with all of these positive things in the way that I feel, and as I've said, I'm enjoying this, what about the negatives or the kind of mid things? Well, some of these may change towards the end of the game, but for me, there is a piece where I feel that given the expectations people have had from this game, and to a degree some of the ways that it's been marketed, people will walk in expecting a Red Dead Redemption. It's not that. It's not a GTA open world, it's not a Red Dead Redemption open world, but it is a nice, crafted, polished, thoughtfully put together piece of a wider world that feels very, very fluid to move between the different sections of. I feel like I'm in a Star Wars world, I feel like I'm in a Star Wars game, and I don't feel like I'm running into walls all the time. When you dive deeper and look at some individual elements of certain things, depending on people's expectations, it is not the deepest or most complicated stealth gameplay in the world. It is perhaps not the flying experience. If some people are wanting to jump into this and feeling that they're going to have a wonderful space dogfighting experience, you get some of that and it's fun, but it's not Star Wars Squadrons. But then again, it's not meant to be. Some of Star Wars Outlaws systems are simple but fun at best, and perhaps a little bit thin at worst. Some of the puzzling, like the slicing for example, if it continues at this pace towards the end of the game, will feel repetitive and simplistic. Character navigation and movement, particularly in the air or mid-jump in some areas, introduces frustration that quite simply doesn't need to be there. And I feel that if people focus on one specific element of the game, and if that's something that they really enjoy in a game, and if that's something that they perhaps can get really frustrated by in the game, and it's not up to their standards, then that's fair enough. That is fair and that is valid. But for me, where Star Wars Outlaws has come together so far, and why, in spite of some of its flaws, I'm still having a really, really good time, is the fact that the sum of its parts pulls together to make you feel really, really part of a Star Wars universe, and really, really scoundrelly. I feel part of a Star Wars world and enjoy myself within that storyline, doing things that smugglers, scoundrels and bounty hunters would do, jumping into a fight with a corny line or a terrible joke. So, as a reflection and maybe as a summary, in a world of gaming where live services have been beaten to death, it seems, over the last few years, as well as the rise of mobile gacha gaming, it is nice to have a game that is trying to just tell a single player story, have an adventure, and knows what it's trying to do in those regards. To me, Star Wars Outlaws steps confidently into this space, and as a sum of its parts really puts me into being in a world of Star Wars and having a lot of fun, being part of the adventure, part of the story, part of the action movie and the romp as well. Now, Star Wars Outlaws' journey to launch today has not been a smooth one. It's had a lot of criticism from preview footage, from looking at slices of the game, from looking and honing in on individual parts of footage. Every game nowadays is subject to this, of Ubisoft being the publisher, and of things around its pricing and around the structure of buying season passes and similar. I stuck all of those to one side as I started playing Outlaws, and genuinely speaking, it reminds me of a couple of games I played recently that I wished I'd played and perhaps even bought at launch. And coming back to my point about the world of live services, there are games that I'd like to exist, and Star Wars Outlaws, to be honest with you at this point, is one of those. Midnight Suns was a game that I played recently and really, really enjoyed, and I'm sad that I didn't support it at launch. As a consumer, as a buyer, I got it for cheaper playing it later, but if I'd supported it at launch and known more about it, the marketing didn't get to me at the end of the day, then maybe we'd get sequels, maybe we'd get more content. As it is, probably not going to happen now. Ditto for Square Enix's or Eidos's Guardians of the Galaxy. Really, really enjoyed that game, came to it late. Thankfully that one did a little bit better commercially. In playing Star Wars Outlaws, to me, upon jumping into the world and going through it, I got the feeling, if not the gameplay exactly, but the feeling of jumping into these worlds and playing these kind of games and being immersed in that kind of way. Now, times aren't easy. Games are a considered purchase. They're more expensive than they used to be across the board. I have really, really been enjoying Outlaws so far. I'll come back to you and let you know my thoughts on a lot of this once I finish the game. I wanted to share this with you, not to persuade you to buy the game, not to tell you that it's perfect, but, as always, to try and give you some context and some more information so you can make that choice for yourself. Honestly, feeling so far, to sum up, if you want to romp through a Star Wars universe in a galaxy far, far away, but in a story and time period that might be quite familiar to you, then this is a lot of fun. And if you're sat on the fence as to whether you want to jump in or not, there will be a bunch of other reviews out there that you can check out, covering a bunch of the points that I haven't managed to address in my criticism here so far, and I'd encourage you to do so. Thanks very much for watching this review. What did you think? Are you playing Star Wars Outlaws? What do you think of it so far? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this content, please throw a like, subscribe, comment with what you'd like to see me review in future, perhaps any criticisms, any ways you think I can improve it. I'd love to hear. It's not normal for me to do these, I don't do them too often. I'm generally a lore channel, but I enjoy many different games and play many different games as well, so I'd like to do more of this kind of thing when the opportunities arise. And if you would like to see my Overwatch lore story, talking about the lore, story and world building of a bunch of different worlds, as well as other games besides, check out some of my best videos in the playlists here. Cheers for tuning in. I've been Hammeh. Take it easy.